welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender at BlenderHD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, May 31st. We'll be taking a look at the UFC 302 card on DraftKings. 12 fights, pay-per-view tomorrow, 6 p.m. lock, I believe. That's normally for a pay-per-view. Hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Hit that subscribe button. If you're new here, hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. Remember, if you're here for MLB, we'll be on later today, 5 p.m. Eastern for Grinders Live, 6:20 for Crunch Time for the MLB slate. Obviously, we got the NBA Finals coming up. We got the NHL playoffs is still going on, PGA. We got you covered here at RotoGrinders. Go join Combo Premium. You get all the sports. Click on that link in the description. Get $40 off your first month. So why not try it out? Join with me. Although, you know, he's not necessarily the biggest MMA person, but we have John Squirrel Patrol is competing in the live final tomorrow. So we had to bring basically TJ. You essentially produce like the Ground and Pound podcast, and basically just like kind of like. Well, I'm just going to make a lineup based on what they say, and you tend to do pretty well doing that.
Yeah, I've had a surprising amount of success in MMA DFS this year, and it's all due to Mike, to Liam, and to Squirrel. I produce the Crunch Time on Saturdays, and I go through the articles and basically just plug in usually just a single entry of what they say. Sometimes I throw in a few more lineups. But I was nervous, obviously, because I'm not an MMA guy.
Before you continue, you mentioned everyone and everything on RotoGrinders but me. Everyone helped you.
And you, of course. But I'm just saying, I'm going to be honest. I don't watch all of the MMA shows. It's usually just Crunch Time that I'm fully tuning in for because I'm producing it. And so today I was producing this one as well. And I figured like I was excited but nervous, right? Because I don't know very much about MMA despite having some success in DFS. And I'm looking through the content and there is very little of it up yet. And so that made me, everything is still from outside of the Ground and Pound podcast. And now everything is still from UFC Fight Night a couple of weeks ago. And so I'm messaging around in Slack trying to see if anybody can, help me out with some, I could relay their picks onto the show. And luckily, I found a way to bring in the big guns, and so we got Squirrel back helping us out because he cares about this show so much he decided to skip his flight to the live final.
Yeah, so I'm supposed to be on a flight to New Jersey right about now to go actually watch the event, but woke up with a terrible head cold. So I got the box of tissues here, got the Vicks, the Vicks puffs. So going high class with the tissues, trying to rehydrate, drinking some vitamin water. Hoping the doctors don't like medically disqualify me from the live final tomorrow because the DraftKings live final is tomorrow. So I'm supposed to be watching the fights at the Prudential Center in the DraftKings suite. But yeah, we're just gonna potentially be doing the lineup from home. We'll see.
Right, and it's perfectly okay for you to do that. I mean, there are plenty of people that don't physically go. You still have your tickets and you're still going to be competing for what's first place? What is it, like 250,000 or something?
250 to first. And I think it drops off pretty quickly anyway.
Good. But it's only a 10-person contest, right?
15. So yeah, top 15 go to
Well, that's going to be dramatically different. I mean, if your head is in the how to win a 15-person contest, that's even much more different than like playing the 555 where there's 300 and definitely the large field stuff. So, I mean, you may see, I mean, well, we'll talk about this slate. We have 2 5-round fights. Like I wouldn't be shocked if I mean, it's completely viable. Well, let's get into it. I mean, now that you're here, right? I don't have to deal with DJ, right? Having to mispronounce names like I normally do, right? In other sports, NHL people make fun of me for mispronouncing names. But at least I pronounce everyone's names in MMA right because I actually watch it. 2 5-round fights. It's a 12-fight card. Okay? 12-fight card is not small, but not like big or anything. I think prioritizing win probability goes maybe a little bit further up, especially we'll see with the underdogs. They're not all that great. And then we also have the spreads of the fights. We have a lot of big favorites. I mean, like when the 70+%, 75% fighters to win start entering the mid 8K range, you know that you're going to be struggling to find some underdogs that you're willing to play. But there are 2 5-round fights, even though the Strickland Costa fight is not a title fight. It is scheduled for 5 rounds. You have Makhachev versus Poirier in the main event. So let's talk about the 5-round fights. For your 15-person contest, I think it's absolutely viable to play a Strickland Costa fight stack and win that.
Yeah, I think it's possible, but we got to see. I mean, I think that fight is about even money to start the 4th round, or to maybe go over 4.5 rounds. So there's a chance you get some. I guess it's like juice to the under 4.5, but over juice to the over 3.5. So yeah, there is good chance you'll get some extra fight time. They're 2 pretty high paced fighters. I think it's definitely the stack that I would go for in cash. For winning a tournament, I don't know. I think you can probably find some underdogs, and there is actually we have a favored fighter at 8,000 now, so there is some win equity to be found on the card. But yeah, I definitely think that's the stack. That's the fight you want to stack in cash. Of the 2 5-rounders, the issue is the other 5-rounders, Makhachev and Dustin Poirier, and that should be a pretty high scoring fight. Islam's obviously like the lopsided favorite, the biggest favorite on the card. But he's also got pretty good chance for a 1st round win. Pretty good chance for a win inside the distance. So even in what could essentially just be a 3-round fight, he could be putting up a monster score as well. And then there is also always the possibility that it does go the full 5 rounds.
I mean, I don't necessarily think it will. But if it does go the full 5 rounds, I mean, Islam could put up a absurd score.
Yeah.
I mean, with his wrestling, we always talk about, John. You're a big proponent of looking at the more expensive fighters, the most expensive fighters. Going, we look at our sims, which will be posted either later today or tomorrow morning, and a lot of times the optimal rates of like these $9,500 plus fighters is much lower than you would expect because they just have to outscore everyone by a significant amount. That, if Dawson, Hafez, Almeida, Holland, Marona, if anyone, Strickland, if Makhachev comes out and even wins in the 1st round, late in the 1st round after 2 takedowns and some ground and pound, I mean, he scores what, 110 points, 105, 110, like that may not even be good enough. At his price, with all these other favorites, heavy favorites there that can definitely score more than him. But hey, if Poirier is tough to get out of there and Islam goes the takedown route, I mean, he could end up with, winning in the 4th round with 14 takedowns and 9 minutes of control time and 200 ground strikes. He could put up a score of 185 in those scenarios. On the other side of the spectrum, you take a look at the name Dustin Poirier and you go, wow, $6,700 for arguably one of the best competitors at that weight class that just happened to be born at the wrong time because he's never won the title. Wouldn't you think that Dustin Poirier's path is an early knockout more so than him like winning late? I mean, he's 8% to win in the 1st round based on offshore odds, plus 525 inside the distance, which is pretty high, but not that bad for a $6,700 fighter. I'm just not sure if the name value will make the ownership carry even more. In your 150 set, I'm assuming probably not in your live final lineup. Like, how much Dustin Poirier do you want to be playing?
So I think we've got him at about 18% projected ownership, and that's more than his chances of winning the fight. Now, I do think that if he wins the fight, because that's one of the things, like the first thing you notice when you look at the card is these like favorites, these high priced fighters are big favorites. And we don't have like anybody like Bo Nickel, like minus 2,000 or anything like that. But we do have Makhachev is like, depending on where you look, like minus 600 up to like minus 700. I think he was minus 750 at one point. So that's about an 82% chance of winning. So yeah, that gives Poirier about a 17 or 18% chance of winning the fight. And yeah, we have him at like 18.3% ownership. But yeah, you've still got like Grant Dawson, Hafez, Jailton Almeida, Kevin Holland, even like all these fighters with a greater than 70% chance of winning. So I don't know. It's going to be tough to find underdogs. And if one of these underdogs does win, if Romanov wins or Mickey Gall wins or Selecki wins or Dustin Poirier wins, especially at 6,700, you're probably going to have them on your lineup because the other four guys, other four massive favorites are probably going to win. So in order to afford, two or three of those guys, you're going to have that super low price favorite, super low priced underdog that wins.
If you're playing large field contests, would you agree? And I'm assuming when the sims come out, if you only could play one of the 5-round favorites, you choose Strickland over Makhachev?
It's a tough call, but yeah, I think so because you're just getting a massive amount of savings there. That's $700 in savings. And so if the Strickland fight does go 5 rounds, then yeah, he's probably putting up a triple-digit score. Although I mean, his last 5-round win was 95 points. That was against Adesanya, who does tend to like suppress scoring in his opponents.
Right. Paulo Costa is more of a punching bag. I don't think he's gonna. I think if Strickland wins in 5 rounds, he'll be putting up a lot more points than against Izzy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you probably have to go to Strickland and take the $700 savings there. I think it's going to be tempting to fit in both 5-round favorites, but then I mean it always is when you have two heavily favored 5-round favorites. The question is, what does the rest of your lineup look like? And then that's where you might say, well, I'm going to maybe go. Maybe I have to give up Makhachev then and drop down a little bit to get a more palatable underdog. But I think we are showing Makhachev to be the highest owned fighter. We have it 54.5% ownership in Strickland to be at 45. I would not be surprised if those numbers like converge a little bit around 50%. Just because it's tough to put a Makhachev into a lineup.
Also, this gives an interesting from my favorite word, combinatorics. For large field contests especially. Now, for smaller field stuff, I mean, you could get away with a high-owned lineup. But if Islam and Strickland are both going to be close to around 50% owned, Makhachev is 9,500, Strickland is 8,800. Once you plug those two people in your lineup, it severely limits the amount of combinations, even of the rest of the last 4 fighters in your lineup. I mean, like you're not even putting Grant Dawson, and like it eliminates some it eliminates some possibilities. Even if you're leaving money on the table, would heuristically would it be something that for large field not to just automatically just say you're better off not playing both? Like I would be much more inclined to play Paulo Costa is going to be probably the most owned underdog. We have him at 35% now. But like playing Makhachev plus Costa, like I could play like any other combination of like the remaining fights, like in up and down, whatever. I could play Selecki here. I could play Dawson. Like there's so many more combos of that a 250% on fight. You're basically saying that on average, a quarter of the lineups in the entire contest will have both of them in it. And we're talking about a 30,000 entry contest. That's 7,500 lineups. And there's nowhere. I mean,
yeah,
the amount of combinations that are left is like under 100. Like the average duplication of that combination is going to be somewhere in the 50 to 75 range. I don't know. I mean, my just without going through this, like simulating it out, just because of price, if Makhachev was priced at 9K and Strickland was priced at 8,300, at least then it opens up the amount of combos that you could make because of salary. I mean, my attitude, I think on tomorrow's slate is I'm going to make a group max 1 of Makhachev Strickland. And if that happens to be the winning lineup, I'll just congratulate the 174 people that all win first place at once. And just that's the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. So you can make some decent like Makhachev Strickland lineups, right? Like, but you can't make too many of them. So there are some like combinations there. It does help that like you've got Cesar Almeida is $8,000 favorite, but he's really a 5,000 or an 8,000 slate favorite, right? Like he's slightly like maybe 52% to win against Kopylov. When you start putting Makhachev and Strickland together in a lineup, it like starts to drop off like pretty quickly in terms of like the quality of your lineups, right? And then if you're maybe pairing them with like 7,000 or so fighters, then sure, like you're not going to be duplicated. But that the
Right.
chances of that lineup hitting are very very small. And then so yeah, there's an issue. I think what you're saying is probably good advice. It's depending on your risk tolerance, right? That if
Right.
you just want to play one of the 5-round favorites, that's probably plus EV, right? If you're eliminating what are going to be a lot of duplicated lineups.
So let's take a look at the other 9K options. We'll take a look at them, and then we'll take a look at some underdogs, and then we'll take a look at the mid-range. So if you're not going to play Makhachev, let's say you don't play let's say you're playing let's say you're playing like Paulo Costa as an underdog and not playing Makhachev, right? That type of lineup. So it opens you up to Dawson, Basil Hafez, Jelton Almeida, Kevin Hall. I mean, we can even go down to Alex Morono and Kevin Holland. They're both like 70+% to win. We also have Andre Lima that we'll talk about him in the mid-range. Dawson is the only like Morono's plus 110. Holland minus 125, Almeida minus 150, Hafez minus 105, Dawson plus 155, even as a minus 575 favorite. My inclination is that like Dawson, Hafez, and Almeida are all like wrestling, grappling heavy type of fighters, while Holland and Morono aren't. I mean, it's going to kind of show maybe in the ownership as well. If I'm not going to play Strickland and I'm not going to play Makhachev, I almost feel like one of these three between Dawson, Hafez, and Almeida is going to put up some 100+ point score with multiple takedowns, control time, ground and pound, that I probably prioritize them over Holland and Morono. I think Dawson will be the lowest owned of that bunch because of his ITD line. I don't like trusting Grant Dawson, especially at 9,300. But Joe Selecki is more likely to just let him take him down. Kind of like it's like this could be one of those fights where the other guy thinks that he could get a submission off his back for 3 rounds, and then Dawson just beats him with 200+ ground strikes in the process, and he puts up a massive score. But truthfully, I don't consider Mickey Gall to be that great. I don't think Mickey Gall makes it very far against Basil Hafez. And I know Romanov has beaten some of like the bottom feeders of that division. But I mean, he couldn't do crap against Marcin Tybura. And Tybura ain't really even a wrestler or anything. I think Jelton Almeida has a chance of just wiping the floor of Romanov. What are your thoughts on this 9K range? And do you think that people will think the same way as I just said, and maybe Holland and Morono are the ones that end up being like 12% owned for no reason? And it's Nico Price and Michael Olafchechuk, and they could get shin checked in half a second. So like you look at it, that's why when we get to the underdogs, I'm going to be going to you going, I don't know who the hell to play down here, because I like all of these favorites. But who would you prioritize in the 9K range, especially in lineups where you're not playing Makhachev or not playing Strickland?
Yeah. So it's really tough to differentiate. I guess you can differentiate. It's just each of the fighters has something going for them that like it would not be a shock if they broke the slate. Starting with Grant Dawson, he gets a ton of takedowns. I mean, he has put up some big scores in 3-round decisions. Like that's something I always look for because people tend to shy away. Like when they see the inside the distance line, they go, oh well, he's out of these fighters, he's maybe the one with the least chance, especially out of like the top three, Dawson, Hafez, and Almeida, one of the smallest chance of winning inside the distance. So he's the most expensive, so he's like going to be the first one to scratch off our list. But like, no, he can put up a massive score in a 3-round decision. So if Selecki keeps getting up, then and Dawson keeps getting him down, and Dawson's also the one that's got the best win odds, then that makes him very appealing. Basel Hafez, the line's been moving in his direction. I think he can put up a big score as well. I think the UFC is probably setting him up here for a win. Mickey Gall is from New Jersey, and you never know what to make of that, but it could just be they're literally sitting around going like, well, who do we got in Jersey? Mickey Gall doesn't have a fight. Let's go, let's set Hafez up against Mickey Gall. Hafez is from I think Philly as well. I think he's training in Denver now. But he is also somewhat from the area. So, and I actually think they've fought before. I heard that on the interwebs that they fought before years ago in a grappling match that Hafez won. Gilton Almeida probably has the opponent in this range that I like the least in Alexander Romanov. I think looked fairly tubby on the scale this morning. And he hasn't he started his UFC career with a tremendously good run. I think he was one of the biggest UFC favorites in history against Chase Sherman. Put up a massive score. Since the fight against Tybura, he's looked awful. He's looked awful off the scale. He's looked awful out of the octagon. And he hasn't looked good inside the octagon. Jailton Almeida hit kind of a speed bump against Curtis Blades in his last fight.
But it's Curtis Blades. Really, the speed bump was that he just gassed himself out and then just got finished trying to take down Blades. And I don't know about you, but maybe Jalen Almeida should be a bigger favorite because people are looking at maybe he's not the drop down from Blades to Romanov is dramatic.
Yeah, right. And Jailton Almeida still got 9 takedowns against Chris Curtis. This was a fight that I was watching on my phone. I forget where I was. I couldn't have the fight on. I was watching the stats accumulate on the ESPN app or whatever. And I saw Jailton Almeida get up to 9 takedowns. I'm like, oh, he's gonna break the slate. He's gonna crush Curtis Blades. Blades is gonna stay in there long enough for Almeida to put up a massive score. And then Almeida lost the fight. He got knocked out. And I wasn't watching the fight at the time, but yeah, I guess he gassed out. But still, he put up a pretty good score. He put up 55 points, which I think he was he's 8,000. So yeah, it was still a pretty useful score with the 9 takedowns. I am surprised he's not a bigger favorite than Basel Hafez, but Hafez and Mickey Gall are kind of more unknowns. Gall hasn't fought in a couple of years. So I think Almeida's gonna crush Romanov here. And I'm so that makes me think if people are like Hafez even more, then Hafez has got to be looking good in whatever people are betting those numbers based off of. And then dropping down below them with Kevin Holland and Alex Morono still wouldn't be a total shock. I think they are a step behind those top 3, but they're also cheaper. And it wouldn't be a shock if Kevin Holland went out there and got a first round knockout. I think he's got 27-28% implied odds for a first round win. That's pretty good even for 9,000. Morono's a little bit lower than that. I'm guessing if one guy really gets super squeezed on ownership, it's probably going to be Morono. Just because he has got that last win was 46 points. But the thing is, Nico Price is probably not going to be the kind of fighter that puts up this kind of slow paced fight. And so that might draw Morono into exchanging more with volume. And Morono has put up decent scores in the past. So I think Morono will be the lowest owned. But he's the cheapest too, and he's the one I like the least. But you can maybe fit him in with one of these other guys.
Also, don't be shocked if Kevin Holland actually submits Michael Olajaychuk and wins via submission as well. Because people think of him a lot as talks a lot of crap and goes from the outside, has some volume, yells at the commentators and everything like that. But he actually is a pretty decent grappler when he chooses to, and Michael Olajaychuk is definitely not. So Well, Jacek pretty much has to win by knockout here in order to beat Holland, probably. In the mid-range, we got two interesting situations in the mid-range. I mean, we have a couple. I mean, if we could talk, I mean, these are the closer fights, closer except for one. We have the last-minute fight that was added, Andre Lima versus Mitch Raposo. We just saw that Lima missed weight by 4 pounds, and he's going to forfeit 30% of his purse. But he's a minus 270 favorite at 8,600 with a plus 125 inside the distance line. So that makes like Lima is probably $300 or $400 underpriced, and Raposo is $300 or $400 overpriced. But I think Lima is going to be 30+% owned, and Raposo may barely be. I mean, he'll probably be somewhere in like 8% ish, 8 to 10%. I don't think these are either fighters that you could trust. And Andre Lima is obviously his claim to fame is he got bit by Severino last fight, right, with the bite mark. But compared to the other guys in the range, I mean, his numbers, his betting lines compared to Eileen Perez, Randy Brown, Jake Matthews, the mid-range fight is so off in comparison. I think outsized ownership is going to go there. What are you doing with that fight, as well as this mid-range 8,200, 8,000 fight where Cesar Almeida is now the favorite, and I'll explain. I think Roman Kopylov may be one of my favorite fighters on the entire slate to play, but I'll let you break down those two. What are you doing with the Lima Raposo fight and the mid-range 8,200, 8,000 fight?
Yeah, I agree. So Andre Lima now has outstanding win odds for his price. And it'll be interesting to see if the line moves based off of the weight miss. I think if it moves, it would move in his direction even more. So this is Mitch Raposo is making his UFC debut, and he really doesn't have kind of the leeway to turn the fight down, no matter what Andre Lima, weighed in on the scales. Like Raposo is the guy who's been waiting for like his shot at the UFC for years. So yeah, he's going to take 30% more money, but potentially has less chance to win the fight. And so I don't know. Like it's interesting. I wonder if it was like a planned weight miss by Andre Lima, knowing like there's no way this guy's turning down the fight no matter what.
Right, and it has to be a weight, but it couldn't be like an 8-pound weight miss, or then the fight would like you can't have it so that the fighters are in like completely different weight classes.
Yeah,
right for that. But 4 pounds is like right at the line of like, yeah, give up 30% of your purse, but here's a win.
Yeah, like so he looked like kind of like disappointed on the scale, like a little bit annoyed or angry or whatever. Like I don't know. Like so maybe it's a totally unintentional thing. Like oh man, I cut the weight, I just didn't get there, and he's really angry about losing 30%. Or maybe it is just a perfectly planned acting job, right? Because it is. You're right. Like yeah, like a lot more, and they would like the commission would have to step in and maybe cancel the fight. 4 pounds, the guy's just going to take the fight, take the extra 30%. But now Andre Lima now has an edge. So yeah, in terms of like DFS, I think that makes him a really good play. I think he'll be one of the more popular fighters on the card. I think we've got him at like 32% ownership. It wouldn't shock me if he even goes a little bit higher. It's tough to know where it would come from. But he's going to be so tempting in the mid range there, just because he's got about the same win odds as like Sean Strickland, who gets the advantage of the extra couple of rounds being in the 5-round fight, but got about the same win odds as like Alex Morono, who's 8,900. So you can maybe save like 300 there, dropping down from Morono to Andre Lima, and still get about the same win odds. But that's gonna cause Lima to be popular. I think Raposo will be the lowest owned fighter on the card. And so I think especially for like large field play, that's maybe you want to have 10-15% Raposo and you're double the field. And then it wasn't too long ago we saw James Yontop, right, was a massive favorite at an underdog price and went out and lost his fight, I think, to a debuting fighter. So anything can happen when they step inside the octagon. Cesar Almeida, is 8,000. I think he's going to be one of those fighters you see in a lot of like duplicated lineups, because he's got the win equity at 8,000, but it's maybe a little bit slighter than people were. Like it's about 52% for Cesar Almeida, 48% for Kopylov. Kopylov's a professional UFC fighter. Like, there's no reason to think he's gonna like. I mean, he's only a 48% underdog, right? So and he's put up a few or a couple of 100-point DraftKings scores in his wins. So I think he's an interesting leverage point if we think that the ownership on Cesar Almeida is going to get really high. Just spend the extra $200, and you're going to have a much lower chance of being duplicated.
I just think the ownership on Cesar Almeida, just to be clear, not Jailton Almeida, is people gravitate to that supposed money line value, but like his fighting style, I mean, we saw it's not like he's a wrestler. He's a kickboxer. That's pretty much what he is. And in his last fight, I mean, he beat Budka. Budka was a huge I mean, Almeida was a big underdog in that fight. And Budka basically just like held him against the cage for like a round and a half, and then gassed himself out in the process, and then got finished. So like, I don't think that's like, Kopylov is a stand-up. Like, Kopylov ain't gonna. I mean, can he mix in a takedown every once in a blue moon? Sure, but this most likely is going to be just a stand-up fight, and I don't see either. I don't know. To me, it just seems like the line is. I think Kopylov actually has a UFC track record. Almeida's coming off the Contender Series. It was a big underdog to a guy that wasn't even a good pet. Like, only had 4 professional fights. It's not like he was facing Jailton Almeida, so some big prospect. So like, people are just overweighting that win, because when I saw the card to begin with, I thought that this fight would be like the $8,800, $7,400 fight. And when I saw that it was in the mid-range, and then I saw the line flip, I'm like, what am I missing? So like, I don't know. If I'm more likely to fade Almeida, like if you don't want to play Kopylov for leverage, like that's one thing, but I'm not sure if this fight scores well. Like, that's the point that I'm kind of making. It's like, I'm not sure if playing a 30% on Cesar Almeida for when he wins, he scores 72 points is like that would be fine if he was a $7,200 fighter, but he's 8,000 is a underdog, right? Underdog price. But really, the true underdogs are 7,600 and below, because you have to. Every lineup must include someone that's $7,600 or below. 8,000 is not like like if Cesar Almeida is the only underdog price fighter that wins, we're gonna have a losing fighter in the optimal lineup, because you can't make a lineup with Almeida being your cheapest fighter. So like, I don't know. Plus 205 inside the distance. I don't think it's I don't know. I don't think it's worth 30% ownership, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be around 30% ownership, because people are going to jam into some of these mid-range fighters because they don't want to play these underdogs. So I know you do the takedowns article, John. You pick underdogs.
Yeah.
You usually put 4 in your article. Yeah. Are you just going to repeat the same one 4 times? Because I don't know how you could look and go, yeah, there are 4 underdogs that I feel pretty strong about.
Right. I think Cesar Almeida will be in the article. I haven't gotten there yet. I think
he's a technical underdog. He's like a quote underdog.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I gotta do pull everything I can, right? If I'm gonna pull 4 underdogs in this card, I do think Cesar Almeida. So I think like Cesar Almeida's chances of ending up on the winning lineup, if he wins the fight, probably depend more on what happens in the other fights. If you have like very few underdogs win, then suddenly getting that win at 80,000, and just like his Contender Series fight, I think he had 96 total strikes. He won a 3-round decision, 71 significant strikes, no takedowns, like 5 minutes of control time, almost 6 minutes of control time. Like, that's a decent score, but it's not a great score. I agree that, like, yeah, if he gets an 85-point win or an 80-point win, then it really just comes down to did one of these massive underdogs pull an upset? And if so, then you don't need to Cesar Almeida's 80. Presumably that other underdog, scores more than his 80 or whatever. But if not, that 80 points or 85 points at 8,000 is going to be pretty useful. So yeah, there's some decent underdogs in the card. I don't know.
We got Mike tagged just recently here a couple minutes ago, Nico Price as an underdog in lineup HQ.
Yeah,
I mean that's the guy that I would, if anyone like has a chance at like wild, like turning this into a wild fight. Like I take a look at the Morono Price fight, and it could be a boring. I mean, Morono's side could be more boring, but Nico Price could turn it into a much more exciting fight than it is. I mean, you could kind of say the same thing for RotoGrinders versus Holland, but I think that Holland is way. I think Holland is way better than Morono from a fight to control the style of fight. I would have to put Nico Price, but I mean, I look at. I mean, Roman. I look at Mickey. I like how do I play Mickey Gall on this slate? I almost feel like I'd rather just play Dustin Poirier. I think I'd much rather play Joe Selecki to get a submission from bottom or something against Grant Dawson, because Grant Dawson fight IQ at times could be pretty suspect. I know you're talking about an $8,000 underdog. I'm trying to talk about the real
Right.
bottom of the barrel. Like you're trying to make these Makhachev you're trying to make Makhachev Almeida lineups, and it's like, well, who the hell do I play down here? They're all going to be probably somewhere around 10-ish%. Like, do I want to play Mickey Gall at 14% owned? Like, if Mickey Gall was 3-4%, I'd be like, okay, I'll take a shot on that. Is it just you plug in Costa and you just it goes 4 or 5 rounds and Costa puts up 62 points and just becomes the optimal because he's just the highest scoring loser?
I think that's a possibility, but I will say, like, there's the chances are one out of these massive underdogs, like Nico Price, Olajaychuk, Romanov, Mickey Gall, and Selecki. So not even dropping down to Poirier. Just those 5 guys that are in 3-round fights. Chances are one of them is going to win their fight, and then that's going to be the guy that you need to have. Like that's going to be the guy, especially in the large field, right? Like the perfect lineup. Like that's going to be the guy that you have to have. And we look at these odds, and it's always like, well, these guys are massive underdogs, and they're massive underdogs for a reason. Like one of these big favorites is going to slip up, and it's going to seem obvious in retrospect. But I mean, you can actually make an argument for each of these guys. I think I've heard somebody online at some point this week make an argument for each of these guys. Like I agree, like Nico Price is the one that has the best chances of winning, and like Alex Moreno is a guy that can get knocked out. Like it would not be shocking if Nico Price put up a massive score. He looked terrible in his last fight against Robbie Lawler. It was like Robbie Lawler's retirement, and like Lawler just came out there like charging, like it was literally his last fight on earth. Which it was his last fight in UFC. He had already announced his retirement. They had the video, queued up to play, and he just knocked Nico Price out in the first round. But but in the past, Nico Price has been on the other side of that, getting the first round knockout. So he's got decent odds, about 1 in 9 to get the first round finish. So it's possible. Olajaychuk actually has even better odds of a first round win. He could get, it's against Kevin Holland. Olajaychuk has like 3, 4 first round, 5, 6 first round knockouts in his UFC career. I don't think it's going to happen, but the ownership's probably not going to be there either. It could happen. He could be the guy that you need to have. Like Mickey Gall, we haven't seen in 2 years. That's apparently intentional. Like he's been trying to come back and work on his game or whatever. So yeah, maybe he looks a lot better after 2 years of training. So we'll see. I mean, Romanov is my favorite, but if he does, Almeida slipped up last fight, so who knows? It could happen, and if Romanov gets the win, it's probably going to be a big score. So I think he actually has the best first round win odds out of any of the 5 fighters. So I mean, somebody's betting the other end of that Jailton Almeida line, right? And anything can happen once they step inside the octagon.
Yeah, Romanov actually has the best first round win odds out of any of the underdogs on this entire slate at plus 600. It's a heavyweight fight. I mean, you'll find that in heavyweight fights often anyway, because they're heavyweight and one wild swing can end a fight at that weight class. So I get it. I don't necessarily see it happening, but yeah, I mean, remember, John, this is UFC. There's eye poke, no contest. There's someone gets bit. There's the referee accidentally stops the fight when someone didn't tap. I mean, like, there are ways for these people, like you say it on the shows, as we've seen week after week, of the weirdest thing you've ever seen, the weirdest decisions you've ever seen, and you go, yeah, I can't picture how Romanov wins, but I mean, there's a world where Almeida has a illegal knee strike, 52 seconds in, gets disqualified, and Romanov has the quick win bonus. And it's like that's baked in. You have to bake those kind of weird things into these fights sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, last UFC card, right? I forget the two women's fighters, but one of the fighters was just on her way to putting up a massive score, headbutted her downed opponent twice. That was it. Medical disqualification. So yeah,
That helped me. Had a big profit last week because I had a lot of her.
Yeah, so like anything can happen in these fights. And there is a reason we look at Romanov and say, like, oh, he's got like a 13% chance of getting a first round win, or 13% implied odds. I just can't see it happening. It can happen. So
right, it could be a leg, it could be an injury by the other. I mean, dude, we've seen, I remember that fight with Hall against Weidman, and Hall gets the quick win bonus with 0 strikes and literally scored no points because Weidman did a leg kick and broke his leg. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
welcome to those possibilities. I mean, you kind of have to think outside of the box when it comes to kind of these low things. I mean, dude, Grant Dawson could go for a takedown, and Selecki could get him in a guillotine, and that could be it. If you're just like, that's the end of the fight, and there you go. I mean, we see
absolutely.
that happen.
I mean, yeah, Joe Selecki and Grant Dawson are going to go out there and fight. And we're pretty sure Grant Dawson's going to win, but we're not entirely sure, right? They're going to be rolling around, right? Who ends up with the submission? It could be Selecki. It's certainly not impossible. But one of my favorite ones is the Dudikova and Estelle Nunez, where Dudikova just jabbed Estelle Nunez. Estelle Nunez kind of falls backwards, trips, falls down, and dislocates her elbow. That's a knockdown. It's a first round knockout, for Dudikova. Put up a massive score. Just because her opponent fell on her elbow wrong. Anything can happen. So I think, especially for the large field, like there's an argument to be over the field or over projected ownership, or own these guys right up to about their win probability. Because if they win, then they could put up a massive score and be the fighter you need to have.
I'm gonna guess your live final lineup.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that you're gonna play Jelton Almeida, Sean I'm gonna put this together. Strickland, right? Yeah, I just don't know what the hell you play on the bottom end.
Yeah.
Unless you play like Edwards or Dos Santos or Rowe. We didn't talk about some of these guys. Would I be kind of correct that maybe this is where you're more like, I mean, obviously, I don't know, your 14 other competitors, maybe you don't want to give away what you're going to do. But I get the sense that you're more likely to just not play Makhachev in that contest, assuming that maybe 10 out of 15 of your opponents will play Makhachev.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I was actually looking at last year's live final, and I think the winner had 2 losses in his lineup. So that's an argument that maybe do you just take Poirier, right? Like take Poirier, 6,700. You hope he less, and then you can do whatever you want with your lineup. And so just eat it off. So you're trying to beat 15 people. I think you can also just say, I'm going to take Paulo Costa, and then you make a decision. Do you think Strickland's going to be highly owned? If you do, then maybe you just fade Strickland, right? Like maybe take Costa and just avoid Strickland. And then you go, then you're fitting in maybe 3 of the 9,000 fighters. I don't know. I don't know what my lineup is. So we're probably not gonna hit on it. But yeah, I do think, looking at last year's, last year was Emmett versus Topuria. I don't remember what the line was there, but I think Topuria came in with about 60% ownership out of the 15 lineups, and I'd probably guess Makhachev will come in about the same amount, maybe 60%. I think Makhachev's 100 or 2 more expensive. I would be surprised if Grant Dawson sees a lot of ownership. I think he's the one most likely of the top 4 to get squeezed out. Because I think people are going to go, for Hafez and Almeida just because they have the better inside the distance lines. And then I think we won't see a ton of Holland or Alex Morono either. That makes it tempting, right? Like if you then are fading Jailton Almeida and Romanov does get that win, you're flipping the script on a ton of on a bunch of the only 15 lineups you have to beat. So,
well, good luck on that tomorrow. So that means you're not doing crunch time tomorrow. Is there even a, I'm not even sure if there is a crunch time, MMA crunch time tomorrow. If there is, it would be at around 3-4 o'clock, but I'm not sure. The schedule flips around since it's June 1st, so I'm not really sure. Maybe TJ knows. But we have the Ground and Pound podcast up for premium members. The premium breakdown, Makhachev versus Poirier with Mike, H3 Buddha, and Liam breaking down all the fights. I will be listening to that today. I haven't listened to that yet, so I want to see what they have to say. And then we'll also have, obviously, our expert survey, Squirrel Patrol's takedowns, Liam's event breakdown. We have the DFS simulation tool, the optimal percentages, our sims for MMA, and obviously lineup HQ for you to build all your lineups with our projections, our ownership, and everything. So sign up for RotoGrinders. Go try us out, even if you want to try us out for 3 days, right? 3 days, $19.99. Click on that link in the description. Get all the access to RotoGrinders Premium, which includes our statistical projections that you could use for props and pick them and stuff like that. But yeah, so do all of those things. John, you may be in attendance in the DraftKings suite at the Prudential Center. And you've been to MMA finals before, right?
Yes. I went to the DK the DraftKings live final last year. It was in Jacksonville. It was that Emmett versus Taporia, and I've been to one other DraftKings UFC event. It was not a live final. They just had tickets. That was in Madison Square Garden.
UFC Fight Night is coming to Louisville next week.
Oh, nice.
Here, I didn't buy a ticket because I'm not overpaying for I don't know about you. Although I've never gone to UFC live, it doesn't seem like that. I go to plenty of wrestling shows, so it's a similar setup in a way. With the way that the octagon is and everything, and with all the tables around, it feels like if you're gonna pay for seats in the 300s or whatever, why aren't you just watching at home? It just feels like how could you, especially if you like grappling, can you really even see anything of what's going on? And you've been at the suites. Is it mostly that you end up watching it on the screen?
Yeah, I mean that's most sports, right? You can't tell all of what's going on all the way down there. You can tell the crowd reactions. There is something to be said for being there and listening how the people that can see how they're reacting to everything.
Well, why would you be paying $200 a ticket for that?
Right. Yeah, I haven't really thought through the process of would I buy a ticket, but it's nice. The suite environment is always nice, and there are multiple TVs, so you're seeing everything. Then you can also take a look. Oh, yeah, they're all the way down there. They're rolling around, and then you look back on the TV. See what's actually happening.
Right. I'm not going to turn down a free trip with a free ticket in a suite for a UFC event. I'm just talking about when I pay $200 to sit in the worst seats in the house, and I'm like, no, and I don't care that they're here in Louisville. I think the prices are going down. I think I could get the 300 seats for $85 or something, and even then, maybe I'll wait to the day of, and maybe they'll have $25 tickets, and then I'll just go and just okay, I'll sit in the last row for $25.
Yeah, reach out to DraftKings.
DraftKings doesn't care about me. I'm not going to get anything. I'm for that. Louisville.
Yeah, but how many people do they have in Louisville, right?
They probably don't have enough that they even can't have anything, right?
But they have the UFC partnership. So I think they get.
Oh, so they may have it. They may have a suite reserved for them, regardless of if. Doesn't matter because they're a partner.
Yeah, I'd reach out.
I'll reach out. Okay, I don't know if I pay enough rake for me to even get a response.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the key there. It's like, I don't know. Not sure about it, but I'll see. Maybe. You don't know.
Yeah.
So John, good luck tomorrow. Good luck to everyone out there. UFC 302 pay-per-view tomorrow. TJ says, or Devin said, whoever's in charge of the RotoGrinders account said
That was me.
there's going to be a crunch time. That was you? So there's going to be
Yeah,
a crunch time tomorrow.
I'm sure there's going to be a crunch time. I'm not sure exactly when yet, because Devin is actually out this weekend, I believe. And so I'll message Steve after this, see if we can whip together. You're probably going to get a message, Blender, that says, hey, do you want to do crunch time with Mike tomorrow?
Okay. So it may just be me saying the same thing I said today on that show. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so look out for
I
that.
guess Liam will be at the event because Squirrel invited him. So Blender, it's probably going to need to be you on crunch time tomorrow.
Right. I'll put that message in my queue. I'll be waiting for that you to tell me what time crunch time is tomorrow, and joining Mike for that. So hit that notification bell. You'll know when. Hey, I don't even know when we're going to go live tomorrow, so I need to set the notification bell to know that. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door, and I'll see you back next week. So I'm always here for you guys, Monday through Friday. 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in DFS, pick'em, props, and everything else on RotoGrinders Today.